welcome to part 5, last part of chapter 1. Probably the toughest part of your test is this, the order of operations, applying it and using it correctly. So be careful here and work on it this week, and hopefully that will get you ready for the test for next week. Order of operations. The problem with this is that people have been taught incorrectly. Hopefully that didn't happen to you, but there have been teachers that misunderstood one of the rules, and I want to talk about that here and in class as well. But let's fill in some notes here. We're on page 20 in your notes at the very bottom. Okay, so fill in the blanks here. So I'm just going to give you the order of operations. The first thing you always do, it's an order, it means you do this first, parentheses or any grouping symbol. These are all other grouping symbols we might see later in math. For the most part, you're going to be dealing with this one right here, parentheses. That's a trump card. He always goes first. What's inside, whatever's inside the parentheses, that's what goes first. Okay? It does not mean if two parentheses are touching each other like this, that actually means multiplication. Okay? It's if there's something inside the parentheses, some math thing in there, you do that first. That's always the first trump card right there. Number 2, exponents. Okay, exponents are always done after the parentheses are done. Okay, exponents, like we saw in the previous video. Exponential notation, turning that base, multiplying that base so many times. Figure that out second. Here's where it gets wild. Okay, I mentioned that some people have been taught wrong. Some people have been taught this rule right here. PEMDAS, the famous sentence is, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Okay, there's a problem with that because the next thing you're supposed to do is multiplication and division from left to right. And that's where it's been incorrectly taught. You don't always do multiplication before you do division. If you have division to the left of multiplication, you go left to right. There's reasons for that. Multiplication and division are called inverse operations. They're opposites. So you go left to right if those are the only remaining math operations in a problem. Okay, and then there's one more rule. Addition and subtraction from left to right, the same thing. Okay, so if you have addition and subtraction, addition is not always above subtraction, like in this PEMDAS rule we learned, you may have learned years ago. So I stopped writing PEMDAS on my classes when I teach this. I stopped writing it this way, and what I started doing is writing it P-E, and then I write M-D like this, and A-S like this. So you can still kind of see PEMDAS, but I'm telling you right here, multiplication and division have equality in the order of operations. We go left to right. So be careful with that if you were taught incorrectly. If you're doing this without a calculator, you could compute wrong if you don't follow that left to right order. Now the nice thing is, after we get past the fraction, chapter 3, you're allowed to use your calculator. Any scientific calculator will do it correctly for you, and that's going to make your life a little bit easier. So from here on out, we're just going to look at some examples. I'll click through them and talk about them, and hopefully you can follow them. This might be a video you might want to go back and rewatch a couple of times, and I just say that from history of struggling on this in previous classes. All right, so number 1 right there, we have 94 minus 14 times 3. So the first thing you want to do is identify what to do first. That dot, remember that dot means to multiply. So I'm going to multiply 14 times 3. That's 42. Notice how I brought the 94 down. Okay, that's valuable for you to learn to write things down like I'm showing, especially if you're going into toward the college algebra classes. You need to learn to work down the page, keep things lined up, do one operation at a time as you go. Number 2, here it is. Here's the example we're talking about. We've got subtraction here, we've got addition here. All right, if we do this correctly, we do the subtraction because it sits to the left of the addition. So you should go 10 minus 4 before you do 4 plus 3. That's what I was talking about when some people have been taught incorrectly. So this 10 minus 4 became 6. Just bring that 3, bring everything else down. Don't be afraid to write it down. Then go ahead and finish up your math right there. 6 and 3 is 9. Taking a look at number 3 now. First thing we do there, inside the parentheses. It's what's inside the parentheses. That's the trump card, so you have to do that. 83 minus 14. And notice I brought everything else down. Everything else is just going to wait patiently until I'm ready to do that. Do one step at a time, step by step, line by line. Take your time and you'll be fine. It's a nice thing to remember right there. The second line right here, I'm going to look at, I've got division, I've got addition. Division wins. Division goes next. That's 15. And then you add the 15, 69, you get 84. So there's 3 nice examples of the order of operations for you. And then a couple on the next page, which is our last slide, page 21. Let's wrap that up here. Again, if you're feeling pretty good about it, if you're doing this at home, this would be a place to pause, work those out, see if you agree, then come back, and I'll start clicking through them now. Number 4. First thing I'm going to do in number 4 is hopefully you identify the first thing to do. You go inside the parentheses, and then you have to go left to right because you have subtraction and addition. So that's the first thing you do. So notice the only thing I did was that, and then I just recopied the rest of the problem. I'm going to be patient as I do that. It'll pay off for you if you do. And this line right here, in line number 2, you had 1 plus 1, so that became 2. Now you have a couple of exponents here. Well, since they're separated by division, you could say you should do this one first, but then you're going to do this one. So I cheated a little bit and I went ahead and did both of them because the division is going to go last for us right there. So we end up working it all the way down to 16 divided by 8, which is 2. And this, by the way, would be a good example to practice on your calculator, even though we're not using them. If you want to input 4 squared in your calculator, I'll show you. There's a button on your calculator that says x squared. It's usually on the left-hand side of the calculator, depending on what you have. But if you find that x squared button, you could just type 4 and then hit that x squared button, and it would square that for you. If you want to do 2 cubed, you have to use a different button. There's probably a button that looks something like that. That's like, I call it a caret or an arrow pointing up. That basically is the exponent button on your calculator. You have to find that, and you'd type in the base first. You would type 2, and then you would type that button 3. That means 2 to the power of 3. If you can't find this button, you might have an older calculator. That's okay. You might look for a button that looks like this, has a y to the power of x, or it could have x to the power of y. Those are some older versions of that. But any of those 3 will work the exponent out for you. All right, let's wrap it up here with question 5. And I went ahead and worked that one out for you if you haven't done it. There it is. You're going to do the 10 times 10 first, then the 3 times 4. Then all that's left is subtraction, which gives you 88. So like I mentioned, this part of the homework, I encourage you to make sure you get that done. In fact, it might be smart to do that first. If you can do that first, you can probably go back and do the other stuff really fast. But this is going to get you most prepared for next week. So good luck. I hope this has worked out for you. And the nice thing is, if you didn't understand something here, you can watch them over again all you want at home, and hopefully that'll pay off for you. So we'll see you soon.